Welcome to Music and Anime. I'm your pianist Ab, and if you've been following my channel, you know this is a completely different background, and that's only because I figured if I'm not performing anything for you guys, I don't really need to be in front of my music studio. So instead, while I'm talking about other things that might not be as music heavy, like performing and stuff, I'll just be behind my desk space, and hopefully you guys enjoy the, new backgrounds as much as I enjoy the comfort of this desk. Anyway, going on to the topic of this video, I figured that as we creep up closer towards Halloween, I'll talk about one of my favorite horror short stories by Junji Ito. If you don't know who Junji Ito is, he's a pretty famous horror manga author. He has quite the variety of horror. He does stuff from supernatural types of horror to the kind of horror that makes you uncomfortable sitting on your chair to the kind of horror that you sink into the back of your chair and it's just not far enough. Some of his illustrations are quite disturbing, and it's the kind of thing where it's so grotesque that you just can't stop staring at it. He has amazing stuff. Anyway, this story, which, as you know from the title of this video, Used Record, it falls under the supernatural type of horror. I don't know, it's got a different flavor to it. At least is how I feel. But it definitely falls under the supernatural side, I guess. So going into the story, I will be going over the differences between the anime and the manga versions. So if you haven't seen or read the story yet, and you wanted to before continuing and, avoiding spoilers and all that stuff, you can watch it in the Junji Ito collection, which I have here. In the Junji Ito collection, it is episode 7. You can also read it in Shiver, which I have here. So it's actually the first story in this manga. This is one of his collections of short stories. A lot of what's in the anime, they took from the collections here. I'll also put in the description where you can get both Shiver and the Junji Ito collection if you want to add those to yours as well. If you have Crunchyroll or Verve, you should be able to watch it on there as well. And full disclaimer, this is not a, sponsored video by them by any means. So there you go. But moving on. This story starts off with two girls listening to a record. Those two girls are Ogawa, who's the one who owns the record, and Nakayama, who, interestingly enough, in the anime, they never say her name. So we don't know her name in the anime, and the only way you do is through the credits. If you look at the, cast, like this person does the voice for Nakayama, and you're like, who's Nakayama? Who's that? Anyway, that's Nakayama, and she's the one who we follow in this story. When they're done listening to the record, Nakayama wants to borrow it so that she can make a copy of it or a recording so that she can also have the song. Except Ogawa doesn't want her to borrow it. She doesn't want to tell her who the singer is or where she even got it from. And what makes it even more difficult, the sleeve that the record is in is just blank. There really isn't anything for Nakayama to go off of in terms of finding this record for herself. They argue over this because Nakayama's understandably a little upset about it, and when Nakayama has enough, she just decides to leave Ogawa's place. As Nakayama is walking away outside of Ogawa's house, we hear Ogawa say the record is more precious to her than her life. So we get this obsessive quality from Ogawa over this record. But when she sees where she placed her record, she notices that her record is gone and that Nakayama had stolen it. So she chases after Nakayama, and they wind up in an alleyway. There's an altercation between the two, and Nakayama ends up hitting Ogawa over the head with a rock. Now this kills her instantly. And this is the first major difference we see between the anime and the manga. So in the anime, right after she, kills Ogawa, you see the shock on her face, and as a viewer that she just killed somebody. From there, it cuts right into the anime opening. So it gives you a very short window of time to just process what happened, in the same way that Nakayama is just processing what happened. In the manga, Nakayama is actually asking Ogawa if she's okay and if she's still alive to say something, and Ogawa's body starts singing. Now this, as a reader, you also have okay, well, I mean, she's not dead, right? In the same way that Nakayama is also oh, great, she's not dead. So you don't have that certainty that she's definitely dead that you do in the anime, because in the anime, right after the opening, she covers Ogawa's body and goes on from there. In the manga, she's like, okay, this is weird that you're just like singing now. So I'm going to leave you here and, I'm going to go make a copy of your record and bring it back when I'm done. And yeah, that's the end of that scene there in the manga. Now, moving on, Nakayama finally has the record to herself, and she actually says that she finally has it to herself. So now we're getting kind of that obsessive quality from Nakayama over this record. And since she has it, she doesn't really have a way to play it, so she's going from one record store to another, or at least a, music store to another, to see if she can get someone to play this record for her, because she really wants to hear this song again. When she walks into one record store, the shop owner actually recognizes the record because he had it in his personal collection, or at least a permanent collection in the store there. And he saw that some girl stole it. So he's thinking that Nakayama is the one who stole his record. He's obviously angry about this and is trying to get his record back. And Nakayama, obviously being, shocked by this as well, starts running away because she's like, no, it wasn't me who stole it and everything. And she starts running. So the shop owner is now chasing her. So she's running away and she goes into this place that turns out to be a jazz cafe. She sits down, she catches her breath, she orders some orange juice, and then she asks the waiter, where's this music playing from? Because jazz cafe, there's music going on, or I guess cafe in general. Anyway, she asks him, is this coming from the radio or, what's going on here? And he's like, no, we have all our music play here from a turntable that we have. And she's like, oh, cool. So I have this record. Could you play this for me? This is a small difference, but it is a difference nonetheless that we see in the anime and the manga. In the anime, he just goes right to playing the record. He's like, okay, cool. Like, you have a record. You want me to play it? Sure, why not? In the manga, he actually asks, well, what kind of music is it? Because it's a jazz cafe and, we kind of want to keep it jazzy. So she describes it as just, a vocalist and, just doing vocalizing stuff. He's like, oh, so it's like a scat or something. Cool, like scat, that's like jazz, so sure. And he proceeds to pop on the record onto the turntable. And what we get next is by far, if you ask me, hey Ab, like, should I read it or should I watch it? I'd be like, definitely both. But I would suggest that you watch the anime first before reading if you have, that option at your disposal. Because I actually watched the anime first before reading, and I felt that watching it made the manga so much better. Because it being a music-themed horror story, you really need to hear the music. And what we hear when the record plays is absolutely beautiful. They did a really good job at making this beautifully haunting. And the way they make this haunting is while the music is playing, as we're listening to this song, the imagery that they attach to it is of a dead woman. She's laying on the floor of a music studio. We don't know how she died or if she was killed, murdered, or whatever. We just know that this voice that we're hearing belongs to this dying woman. It is interesting because you're hearing it and it is both again, really beautiful piece, but then it's like sad at times as well. Just that, along with the imagery of that dying woman, you're like torn. It's really difficult for you to be okay to like this. It's like, I really like the way this sounds because it sounds really nice, but at the same time, it's like, I'm listening to a dying woman sing. So yeah, it's unsettling. Either way, it is quite nice. But what we hear next from this creepy guy who was also in the cafe, because he's listening to this as it's playing too, and when the song finishes, he's like, I can't believe that this is it. That's Paula Bell's Scat. And this guy was so shocked to be hearing this because this song was actually recorded after her death. And he says that it's a song from beyond the grave. If that doesn't make your bones chill, it is... when he said that line, I was like, oh my god, Junji Ito, you're a freaking genius, because that is so cool. It was already haunting at first, but then it's just thinking about, that's just not possible. And yet, there it is, on a turntable, spinning. Yeah, it was awesome. Now, the reason I say you should watch the anime before reading the manga for this short story specifically, is because in the manga, this same scene is just a page of laws and D's and Scooby-Doos and, that doesn't register in your mind as anything. So, I guess you could go as far as imagining the song or whatever. It's just, there's definitely a disconnection there between what you're seeing on the page and what you should have in your head. But I guess to make up for that in the manga, again, Junji Ito, he describes Paula Bell's backstory, like how that happened through the same creep guy. Like he gives us just a lot more information about this singer, how she died and how that got recorded and everything. Well, I mean, it got recorded the same way, but how she ended up in the studio in the way that she was, which I won't go into detail here. So I'll leave that entirely up to you if you want to read it. If you read it before watching the anime, let me know if you were like bummed that they didn't include that, or, you know, I'm interested to know what you think. Moving on, it actually ends quite shortly after that. Nakayama is freaked out over this creep guy and kind of how he is about it. And she notices that he's kind of following her behind her. So yeah, so she's kind of like trying to run away again. So as she's running away for the third time now, she actually bumps into the record store guy, the shop owner there again, and he was still out there, you know, looking for her. She's being chased not by one, but by two people now, and ends up in that same alley where Ogawa's dead body was in. There's this pile of logs that she thinks to climb over so that she can hop over the wall. And when she peers over, the creep guy is just staring at her, and he's got quite a face. So she's completely startled by this and falls back over the logs, tumbling everything over and being crushed under the logs as well, resulting in her death. So the record store guy is frantically looking for the record on his side there, and the record had fallen over the creep guy's side. So the creep guy, he's got the record, and he's just like, oh, well, I mean, if you don't need it anymore, I guess I'll take it. And he's just there, and he can feel the song already. This ending is so cool, because it's really hard not to like the anime more than the manga for this particular story, because again, it's music. We hear Paula Bell's Scat playing again, and while she's singing, both Ogawa and Nakayama start singing along with Paula Bell, and it is so good. It's like, again, it's like, is it okay that I like this? Like, is it okay that I like the way it sounds? Because they're three dead people singing, and it sounds nice. And it's a cursed thing, sure, but still. Anyway, I love this short story. I love the music that goes along with it, and the Junji Ito collection, like the soundtrack is really good for it. But, you know, this one in particular, the story that's along with it really just wowed me. I absolutely loved it. So please check it out if you haven't already. And, you know, again, both read the manga, watch the anime, because they both do things quite well. And definitely tell me which one you liked more. Do you like the, you know, being able to imagine this song and how it was in a manga, or really having music right there and taking it all in the anime? I'm also interested if you did read the manga first, how did the music in the anime compare to what you had in your head? How different was it, or how similar? I'm interested in knowing that as well, because I had no idea what to think of going into this, because I just hadn't seen or heard of it before. So, yeah. So that's the end of the story there, and because you stuck with me this long, if you have, thank you for spending this time with me, I guess. And yeah, I got a little something that I want to show you, and that is, if you've been staring at it this whole time right there, I made a little thing. And if you are wondering, that is, look at that, huh? Anyway, I took a 10-inch record that I had in, you know, my, you know, record collection. I just made a blank sleeve for it, replicating the used record, you know? I absolutely needed this in my collection. I really hope that the Junji Ito collection, like the soundtrack, gets a record at some point. I'm looking at you, Tiger Lab, because you make things happen. But yeah, I would absolutely love if they actually made this into an actual thing. But yeah, I went with a 10-inch record, and if you look at the manga, there are parts in it where it was hard to tell, because gauging the size, I was like, it's either a 7-inch record or a 10-inch record. I ultimately went with the 10-inch record. There's this one image, which I'll have here, of Ogawa holding the record, and it's just way too big to be a 7-inch. But then when the guy in the cafe plays the record, it looks small enough to be a 7-inch record. And the adapter is one big thing that really indicates that, you know, it's a 7-inch. Anyway, it's like some weird in-between or both or whatever. But I went with a 10-inch because that just looked and felt more right to me. Let me know if there are any Junji Ito props that you've made, or any things Junji Ito that you've made that you have in your collections. I would love to see that. Send them my way on my Twitter. That's it'll be right here. Same tag, music and anime. So that's it for this video, and I have Pumpkaboo here to help me say bye to you guys. So bye, and see you on the next video.